87873. Text me at 84850. You can tweet me on @LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC, and you can watch us live from Strasbourg on LBC's Facebook page. Stay tuned, it all starts next.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC. From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, a 15-year-old boy is reportedly amongst the 4 people killed in a major avalanche in the French ski resort of Tignes. A number of others are believed to be missing. It happened in an off-piste area in the resort, which is popular with British holidaymakers. Snowboard instructor Simon Cook helped with the rescue effort. He's told LBC dozens of people were involved.
The job was monstrous. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, really. I mean, people were going along, the ski instructors and the ski patrol were going along in waves, probing for people, I suppose. And then after that, they would scoop it with the machines and then try it again and again and again. It was a long, long process.
The Justice Secretary has dismissed calls to drastically cut the number of people in prisons amid overcrowding. There are currently almost 85,000 inmates in England and Wales, just over what's called the official usable operational capacity. Liz Truss says releasing offenders early would be reckless and would endanger the public. Hundreds of people have gathered for the funeral of Katie Ruff, the 7-year-old who was murdered in York last month. A 15-year-old girl has been charged with her murder. And Prince William spoke to a homeless teenager this morning as he helped start a new helpline for young people who are sleeping rough. He visited the Centrepoint charity in central London. The LBC Markets report, the FTSE 100 has ended the day up 20 at 72.78. The pound buys you $1.24 and €1.17. LBC weather, a mix of clear spells and drizzle into the evening, frosty in parts, a low of 2 Celsius. Tomorrow cloudy with some sunny spells, showers possible, a high of 13 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rupert Bhatia.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Ross Powell. Taking a look at the M25, there's a lane closed on the clockwise carriageway between junction 25 at Enfield and 26 at Waltham Abbey because of an accident. Delays are stretching all the way back to junction 27 for the M11, that's partly due to an earlier accident on that stretch. In Kent, on the M20 heading south, there's a lane closed off because of an accident between the M26 and junction 4 for Leybourne, an accident there causing delays back towards junction 2A with the A20. And at Surrey, the A3 northbound, we've got a rolling roadblock in place at the moment near Burtham because of an accident. In Cambridgeshire, the A428 still very slow on the westbound stretch towards the St Neots Road, but all lanes are now open after an earlier accident there. And if you're heading towards Rutland and Stamford, the A1 is still closed on that northbound carriageway between the Rutland Water turnoff and Harloxton because of a serious accident. There is a diversion in place which you'll need to follow. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Well, we have a crisis in our prisons. In fact, we have many crises in our prisons, but one of them is sheer numbers. Now, if you look at the sort of history of this, since the end of the war, our prison population rose pretty much in line with the population rising. And by 1990, there were 45,000 people in British prisons. But the number now is 85,000. And yes, there are 10 million people more in the country than there were back in 1990, but it is a very dramatic rise. And to try and deal with this problem, today, the Justice Secretary, Liz Truss, said this.
The idea that our prisons are too full for us to meaningfully reform the offenders within them. I think that's a counsel of despair. It's certainly true that reoffending rates are too high and that our prisons are too violent, and I acknowledge that. But the wrong way to address that would be to shorten sentences or release offenders early. That would be reckless and it would endanger the public. And it would restrict the freedom of the independent judiciary to choose the most appropriate sentence for each offender.
What is she talking about? On the one hand, Liz Truss is telling us that these are bad people, dangerous people. They can't be let out into society without serving their sentences. And on the other, will somehow manage to keep the prison population where it is through a system of reform, all of which seem to me to be fairly indefinable. I've looked at this graph going back to 1945. The average growth per annum is about 3.4%. Surely, if our prisons now are chronically overcrowded and at least 20,000 prisoners are living in really seriously overcrowded conditions, surely the answer is we should build more prisons. What other possible answer could there be? And I want to hear from you, and particularly if you've been in prison, you know somebody in prison, you work or have worked in the prison service. Can we go on the way we are? To get involved in this conversation, please call me on 0345 60 60 973. You can text me at 84850. You can tweet me on @LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC, and you can watch the show live on LBC's Facebook page. And I'm doing all of this live from Strasbourg. And our first caller of the evening is Amy in Hove. Amy, 85,000 people in our prisons, overcrowding. Should we simply build more prisons?
Yes, basically.
Yes.
Absolutely right. What is the issue? I don't understand with not building more prisons. I don't know why that isn't just a perfectly sort of commonsensical idea. I know that's not a good word, but
let me give you, Amy, a commonsensical answer. If it is a good word.
Trumpish.
Well, it's catching, isn't it, this Trump stuff? And he would have, in fact, he would have sounded a bit like Liz Trump today about bad people being let out. I think, Amy, the answer is dead simple. I think it's called money, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you talk about money, but I mean, it just seems to be how much money is. Actually, money is a big issue with everything, and they need to figure out how to spend it better. But really, this whole idea of releasing people who are, before they're supposed to be released, it just sort of defeats the whole purpose of sending people to prison. And there also seems to be an issue with people thinking that it's something to do with it's supposed to be a punishment. It's not meant to be reforming or, it's a punishment to go to prison. If you break the law, you go to prison. And how letting people, who do you decide to let go early? I don't get it.
Well, surely, Amy, the point is that, yes, it is a punishment, but also, if you can reform people when they're in prison, they might not reoffend.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an argument there somewhere, isn't there?
Yes. No, yes, obviously. But, I mean, the main idea of prison is to take away your freedom because you've broken the society's laws. Obviously, reform is great, but the number one thing is people go to prison as a punishment. They get their rights taken away. And what I don't understand is when we have an increase in population, we obviously are going to have an increase in crime. I mean, unfortunately, the two seem to go hand in hand, and yet nobody seems to talk about building more prisons. They just talk about letting people go early, which doesn't make any sense.
Amy, you're perfectly logical. What was illogical was Liz Truss saying, we're not going to let people go early, and yet we'll manage to maintain the prison population where it is. Frankly, she was whistling in the wind. I found what she said today to be weak and totally and utterly illogical. Amy, I thank you for your call. I go next to Paul in Bromley. Paul, do we need to build more prisons?
Possibly, but I think the ones we've already got need to be fit for purpose, as in not making it a place where, I mean, there's a programme on tonight, I think, on the TV, that basically the prison service, the officers aren't in charge. If you're a drug addict, then the best place to go, it seems to be, is in prison. And they're not they're not places where it's, it doesn't appear to be a place that you're not that bothered about if you go back again.
Well, are you arguing that the prisons should be harsher, Paul? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that they should do what they're meant to be doing, which is punishing people. The lady just said, you lose all your freedoms, and not just, some of them, and there's cliques of, prisoners that seem to be in control, not the prison officers.
Well, there are certainly big problems in our prisons, and one of them, of course, is radicalisation. Islamic radicalisation is happening in our prisons, and you would have thought, Paul, we could deal with that. But the basic question I'm asking tonight isn't so much about the conditions in prison, important though that debate is. Mine is about numbers, and I think that the Justice Secretary today has completely flunked it. You know, we can't go on, surely, Paul, without building more prisons.
Well, if reoffending came down 10, 15, 20% because they were not places you really want to go into if you've stolen a loaf of bread, for example, then you wouldn't have so much of a problem with the numbers. But I do agree on the numbers. It seems like you need to build more prisons. But first of all, make the places you already got places that you know are punishing you.
So there's too much TV and too many mobile phones, Paul, yeah?
Sounds like it, yeah.
Sounds like. Well, I have to say that is a view that is commonly shared, and a lot of people would say, you know, make prison really, really tough, and then nobody is going to want to go back. And I get that, and I think there is an element of punishment, but I also strongly feel, particularly with first-time offenders, that prison needs to be a place where perhaps they can learn something and do something, maybe better themselves, maybe have a chance of getting out and getting a job. And we have to remember that quite a lot of prisoners, you know, are people who come from difficult family backgrounds, have failed badly at school. So yeah, I get the punishment bit, but Paul, I would argue, give first-time offenders a chance to get better and improve. My first Facebook message is Georgina Oliver, who says, find a deserted island somewhere and send the whole lot there. Well, how very enlightened, Georgina. We could do that, but I think actually as a civilized country, we absolutely have to, particularly with these first-time offenders, try, if we can, to reform them. Matthew in Newcastle, 85,000 people in prison, bursting at the seams. Do we need to build more?
No, certainly not. Hello, Nigel. First time caller.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well. So what do we do, Matthew? What do we do? What's the solution?
Well, I joined the prison service. I'm retired now. Many years ago. First thing in the morning, we paraded in full uniform. We owned those landings. Nobody disrespected us, but we also showed respect to the inmates. The biggest problem you've got is prisons for profit and no respect from the inmates to the staff and the staff to the inmates. Nowadays, you see prison officers walking round in half uniforms, training shoes and everything. It's a disciplined service. It needs to return to discipline. All this nonsense of televisions and radios and games, rubbish. Lock them up, keep them behind the doors, give them what they're entitled to, then let them out. Then start rehabilitating them. Prison officers are turnkeys. That's the old-fashioned saying. That's what we're there to keep them away from the public. Whilst they're in prison, you teach them to behave, then you let them out, and then you start rehabilitating them. There is no other way. You cannot run prisons for profit. Sorry,
so,
that's
Matthew,
my rant's over.
No. I mean, look, I'm pleased. And how long did you serve as a prison officer?
16 years. I got medically retired.
Right. And so why has there been a breakdown of discipline within the prison service itself?
Nigel, you know as well as I do, there's far too many people that want... how can I say this without being very rude to everybody? There's far too much of a blame game these days in every single walk of life. You do something, you get sued. People are frightened to death. When I was there, people used to call me Sir and Mr. by my surname. And I used to talk to them. I used to talk to them respectfully, and we never really had many problems. Yeah, every walk of life, discipline service, you're going to get problems. But we didn't have the problems what we had now. It's all to do with the blame game. Stop the blame game. Give the prison service some money. Recruit all these ex-squaddies that are coming back from the wars. Give them a job. And I'll tell you what, within 10 years, you'll have a decent prison service again.
Well, Matthew, that's really interesting. One quick little question for you. You know, and I hear exactly what you say, but is there surely not an argument that whilst people are in prison, they might have a chance to learn something and better themselves too?
The prison service is finished. As it is now, the inmates rule the prisons. The staff in these... with the security companies that are running. HMP Birmingham, I served many terms at HMP Birmingham. I worked at Parkhurst, Wormwood Scrubs, worked all around the country because of a certain discipline I had. And I'll tell you what, Birmingham was a fantastic prison to work at. but they just decimated the staff. Nobody was allowed to say anything, do anything. The prisoners took control. And I'm sorry to say this, Nigel, the Human Rights Act took over. And you're well aware of that. You weren't allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
In some respects, I'm glad I came out. I'd be up to me 30-odd years now if I was still in. But I'm glad I'm not there now. I've got some very good friends that are still in, and they hate it.
Matthew, a depressing picture about what's going on in our prisons, and we thank you very much for your call. Your Facebook messages. Graham Timms says, where you get people, you get crime. The more people we bring in, the more crime will be committed. It's not rocket science. Well, certainly, Graham, the evidence is the bigger the population, the more crime there will be. The question is, has open-door immigration made a difference? Well, I'm going to answer that just in a moment. But right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and the time is 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Amazon criticises selling books promoting Holocaust denial and fascist propaganda. Titles such as The Myth of Extermination of the Jews, Holocaust, the Greatest Lie Ever Told, or The Hoax of the 20th Century, the case against the presumed extermination of European Jewry. Kevin's in Croydon. What do you make of the selling of these books?
Why don't they an open debate on this?
What's to debate?
But how do we know if we're not allowed to debate it?
Hang on the line for a second. Carol's in St Albans.
People who went into those camps at the end of the war, i.e. my dad, who was an ordinary British Tommy and saw everything, it affected him for the rest of his life.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, making you welcome at over 40 hotels in Europe.
eBay has every kind of part to help your car pass its MOT.
Son, come and have a look at the car. There's a few things I've fixed ahead of its MOT. I've topped up the washer bottle.
Screen wash.
I've replaced the wipers.
Windscreen wipers.
I've sorted the indicators.
Light bulbs.
And press that.
Horns. Shop eBay's unbeatable selection of parts and accessories to help you get your car MOT ready. The ultimate pass your MOT first time shop.
Don't ignore it's the law to have a work. Don't ignore the workplace pension. Get to know your responsibilities with help from the pensions regulator. Visit workplacepensions.gov.uk.
Don't break down now. I've got friends round tonight.
Oh, don't break down now. I've got to open the shop.
Whether you're running a home or a business, you'll want a boiler that won't let you down. With a new one from British Gas, you'll not only get £400 off, you'll get a fixed price guarantee and a 5-year warranty for added peace of mind. But, I'm getting to it, Wilbur. You only have until 31st of March to get £400 off. Search British Gas or call 0800 754 754. Conditions apply.
You're the backbone of our business. Strong, reliable, plus you look great. And you're really well built.
Oh, cheers, Steve.
Not you, Terry.
The Renault Traffic with 4 years 0% APR, servicing, roadside assistance, up to 4 years warranty and 3 What Van Awards. Make it part of your team. Visit a Renault Pro Plus specialist dealer to find out more. Business users and participating dealers only. Minimum deposit of 20%. Renault Finance hire purchase. Register by 31st of March, subject to status. T's and C's apply. See renault.co.uk/offers.
At Red or White Tonight, we make recommendations based on what you like. It's great wine without the faff. Order now at redorwhitetonight.com. Always drink responsibly.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes, and eyes and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
You already get your eyes and teeth checked. Why leave out your ears? They're just as important. So, if you've noticed a change in your hearing recently, come and see how well you're hearing for free at Boots. Boots, let's feel good. 1 free hearing check per year, over 18s only.
Whether you're saving up for a new home or you've got a wedding to pay for, the money you're putting aside is perfectly safe. Protected by the FSCS up to £85,000 should anything happen to your bank, building society or credit union. It's completely automatic, free of charge, and backed by government. In most cases, you'll get your money back within 7 days. You'll probably never need us, but it's good to know we're here. Search FSCS Protected for details.
Zingflowers.com. Fresh, hand-tied bouquets with easy online ordering.
Zing flowers are amazing every time.
This is LBC, live from Strasbourg. The Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Our prisons are in crisis. There are 85,000 prisoners. We're completely overcrowded, and yet our Justice Secretary Liz Truss says it's a counsel of despair to say our prisons are too full. She says that somehow through reform we're going to solve the problem. And I'm saying that's illogical. With a 3.4% increase every single year in the number of people put into prisons, surely we have to build more prisons. And a couple of your texts and tweets here I find very interesting. Our prisons are at breaking point. The first thing to do is to build more prisons, and the second is to send offending immigrants back to their home countries. That's Callum in Liverpool. Strong stuff. Nigel, what would you do to address the prison problem if you were in government? Mark from Hastings. OK, folks, here's just a few facts for you. There are 10,000 foreign prisoners in British prisons, and yet there are only 1,000 British prisoners overseas in foreign prisons. Half of those that are in our prisons from overseas are from the European Union, about 4,500, whereas there are only 300 British citizens in European Union prisons. So surely there is a fairly obvious answer here. Don't we say to our friends and colleagues in the European Union, whether it's pre-Brexit or post-Brexit, actually, you can have your prisoners back. But here is where it really becomes weird, because a European Court of Justice judgment last year said that it was difficult for Germany to send prisoners back to Hungary and Romania because their prisons were third world conditions. I mean, what on earth are we doing in a political union with countries who've got prisons like that anyway? And how bizarre that free movement lets everybody in, but it's quite difficult in some cases to send them back. Now, in theory, there is a system now in place within the EU where we can send prisoners back to their original country. And at the moment, it's so successful. Liz Truss, Justice Secretary, are you listening? It's so successful that 5 prisoners a month are being sent back to the European Union. So, Mark from Hastings, you asked me, what would I do if I was in charge? And would I actually build more prisons? Well, I'm going to put it to you right now. Actually, we may not need, for many, many years, to build foreign prisons if we cut the number of foreign prisoners. So, yep, sure, we can build more prisons, but wouldn't it make sense to begin with for those 4,500 EU citizens to be sent somewhere, and perhaps we'll take Hungary and Romania off the list and be nice and be kind. But I'm sure there are many other countries in the world where we could send those prisoners back to their original country of origin. And that, I think, would make a very big difference, and quite why this government hasn't got the guts to grip that and to see that, and why Liz Truss, as the Justice Secretary in what is supposed to be a Brexit government, didn't make that point today is completely and utterly beyond me. Maybe George in Notting Hill knows these answers. George, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I'm all right.
Can you hear me well?
I can, yeah, far away.
Okay, well, my first question is to you is, who do you think is going to be paying for these new prisons within the UK?
Well, you're quite right, George. At the moment, the cost of looking after each prisoner is £40,000 to £45,000 a year, and you're quite right, to build new prisons is going to cost many tens of millions of pounds. And, I started off this evening, George, by saying surely we need to build more prisons, but I think we may just have found a way of delaying that perhaps for 5 or 10 years.
Some may argue that point that you made, but what I'm trying to get at is, at the end of the day, the people are going to suffer for the fact that there's more crimes being committed within the UK, whether it's from people internationally or whether it's from it's homegrown from the people within the UK. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, how we're going to look internationally to every other country is we're going to look like a country full of criminals, which we don't want. We don't want to build more prison. We don't want to put more people in prison, and we don't want to increase the statistics. What we need to look at is maybe lessening the sentencing on specific laws. for example, drug laws, because I'm a university student and I've got a lot of friends who smoke cannabis, for example, and they're not bad people. They're actually well-educated, intelligent individuals, and they just happen to either smoke cannabis on the weekend or when they're at a party, or they have a drink. And unfortunately, more crimes are committed. George. If you let me finish, please. More crimes are committed in the UK due to alcohol abuse than cannabis, and that's just one example. And sorry, what was you going to say, Nigel?
Yeah, but George, people aren't in prison for smoking cannabis. Nobody's in prison. Nobody is in prison in our country simply for smoking cannabis.
They're getting warnings, and then it happens on several occasions, and then they get sent for a few months to prison. Even for minor offences, it can be resolved. For example, drink driving. People are getting sent to prison for drink driving, which I do agree with, it's very dangerous and it's not allowed. How about, instead of looking at the problem and creating another problem, why don't you look at the problem and create a solution? For example, reducing the alcohol consumption within the UK, looking at cutting down on alcohol supply, looking at monitoring students' alcohol consumption within universities. I've had a friend pass away recently due to alcohol overdose.
George, look, there are some terrible social problems in this country with alcohol. I get that. I understand that. But to make social change or to encourage social change like that takes a hell of a long time. The problem right now, George, is there are 85,000 people in British prisons, at least 20,000 of whom are living in seriously overcrowded, really not nice conditions at all. And if the number of people being convicted means that prison places are going up every year, I get what you're saying. I don't think anybody should be in prison for not paying the BBC licence fee. I get what you're saying, but we have a crisis problem now. I asked the question, should we build more prisons? But I've now answered it by saying we don't need to if we send foreign prisoners back to their country of origin. What on earth could be wrong with that?
In a way, you're right. But you said that only 10,000 of the people in prison within the UK are from a foreign background, and you said only 1,000 British people are overseas in other countries, right? But you haven't taken into consideration what other nationalities are in those prisons overseas, as well as British people. So it could be well more than 10,000 people combined. What you're trying to get at is very, very narrow-minded way of thinking. You're looking at one thing and you're picking on it and you're picking on it. This is about our prison system within the UK. Foreigners that come here and commit crimes, possibly they should be sent back or given back to the government where they come from for them to deal with them, which is completely understandable, yes. But if you really believe that is the problem why we have overcrowded prisons, then I think you're mistaken. Because
George, you're fully entitled to your views, mate. But I just think I've given you a logical way that we can ease this crisis, because my goodness me, we do have a crisis, even if the Justice Secretary appears to be putting her head in the sand. Richard Simcock on Facebook says, prison is for punishment, always was and should be. TVs, phone games, consoles, 3 meals a day. I'm pretty sure some old folks' homes would love that. Caroline Gracie says, we need to make prisons tougher and maybe arm the guards. Well, Caroline, we can make prisons tougher, but that doesn't help the short-term crisis and problem that we've got now. I wonder what Felicity in Cranham thinks about this problem of overcrowding in prisons today.
Well, she's become lots of more points have been made since I first rang up.
Yes, okay.
Now, my initial thing is about capital punishment. I don't know what your feeling is on that. I was prompted to ring because I've just heard of a case of an 81-year-old lady who's been raped. Now, your producer said they may have arrested someone, so I'm not going to speak about that particularly. But there are people that really do not deserve to walk the streets, do they? Now, why build more prisons? Yes, if we're going to give real punishment, which isn't capital punishment, life should mean life. You would need more prisons. But
yes, well, of course you would, Felicity. But I mean, let's just think about this capital punishment issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I genuinely think that if there is an issue that from my parents' generation to my children's generation has seen a massive shift and change of opinion it is on capital punishment. And if there was a referendum, Felicity, on capital punishment today, it would not pass. I do believe that.
Do you believe
quite
that?
strongly? Yes, I do actually. I just think that sometimes, you get social attitudes towards something that change. But even if you did have capital punishment, you wouldn't be hanging that many, would you?
Not the numbers that you're talking about.
No, that's right. I'm talking about a crisis. We've got huge numbers of people in our prisons. I think that Liz Truss today just sort of sidestepped this issue, really, did not face up to it, did not confront it. If we carry on as we are, we're going to have to build more prisons and start that process pretty quickly. But if we did get rid of foreign prisoners, and EU ones for a start, at least she'd buy herself time. Surely, Felicity, that's logical, isn't it?
Those points. And that's why I think sentences should be longer for people that commit horrendous crimes. I know capital punishment, as you say, it's not going to come back. But
no, it's not.
People don't serve a just sentence these days. Yes, no. I agree. Foreign prisoners should be sent back to where they came from, and hopefully, by the time they've committed served their sentence, we will be in a situation that our borders will be protected. They won't be able to come back.
Well, and that's one of the points, Felicity, I think, that helped win the referendum for the Leavers was so we could check who was coming into our country and stop foreign criminals coming in. Thank you for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30, time for the news with Rupert Bartier.
The Justice Secretary has dismissed calls to drastically cut the number of people in prisons amid overcrowding. Liz Truss says releasing offenders early would be reckless and would endanger the public. A 15-year-old boy is reportedly amongst the 4 people killed in a major avalanche in the French ski resort of Tignes. A number of others are believed to be missing. It happened in an off-piste area of the resort, which is popular with British holidaymakers. And hundreds of people have gathered for the funeral of Katie Ruff, the 7-year-old girl who was murdered in York last month. A 15-year-old girl has been charged with her murder. LBC weather. A mix of clear spells and drizzle into the evening. Frosty in parts, a low of 2 Celsius. Tomorrow, cloudy with some sunny spells. Showers possible too. A high of 13 degrees.
LBC Travel. Good evening. I'm Andy Lake. Still a couple of issues on the M25 this evening. Clockwise, first of all, is queuing between 24 for Potters Bar and 26 for Waltham Abbey after an accident. Delays there of around half an hour. Clockwise also still pretty stop-start between 26 for Waltham Abbey and 27 for the M11 after another accident. The M20 still slow heading out of London between the M26 and Junction 4 for Leybourne after an accident. The A41 in Hendon also queuing coming into London towards Cheney Walk after an accident there. Hammersmith Bridge remains closed in both directions for maintenance work. That's going to be the case all week, actually. The Woolwich Ferry also down to just a 1 boat service because of mechanical problems. That's been the case for much of the day. Bounds Green Road and Bounds Green is queuing on both approaches to the works there, just off the North Circular. And to the north of Peterborough, the A1 stays closed northbound between Stamford and Grantham. A long stretch of road there. A tree fell earlier and there was a serious accident causing some bad delays on the approach. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
You're the backbone of our business. Strong, reliable, plus you look great. And you're really well built.
Oh, cheers, Steve.
Not you, Terry.
The Renault Traffic with 4 years 0% APR, servicing, roadside assistance, up to 4 years warranty and 3 What Van Awards. Make it part of your team. Visit a Renault Pro Plus specialist dealer to find out more. Business users and participating dealers only. Minimum deposit of 20%. Renault Finance hire purchase. Register by 31st of March. Subject to status. T's and C's apply. See renault.co.uk/offers.
This is a live update for UK businesses. From homeware to men's fashion, the UK's retail industry is known for its quality. And right now, thousands of buyers worldwide want to stock UK goods in store and online. To bag your next contract, search Exporting is Great.
Zingflowers.com. Fresh, hand-tied bouquets with easy online ordering.
Zing flowers are amazing every time.
This spring, purple will be the only colour to be seen in, or blue, and of course black. The only cut we'll be buying is skinny fit and baggy. As for dresses, we'll be wearing them short and, long.
At Experian, we can't predict the future, but our credit matcher service can help you find credit cards and personal loans you're more likely to be accepted for before you apply, without affecting your credit score. Take the guesswork out, get your free Experian credit score, and try Credit Matcher today at Experian.co.uk. Experian Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. See website for details.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
You already get your eyes and teeth checked. Why leave out your ears? They're just as important. So, if you've noticed a change in your hearing recently, come and see how well you're hearing for free at Boots. Boots, let's feel good. 1 free hearing check per year, over 18s only.
Don't break down now. I've got friends round tonight.
Oh, don't break down now. I've got to open the shop.
Whether you're running a home or a business, you'll want a boiler that won't let you down. With a new one from British Gas, you'll not only get £400 off, you'll get a fixed price guarantee and a 5-year warranty for added peace of mind. But, I'm getting to it, Wilbur. You only have until 31st of March to get £400 off. Search British Gas or call 0800 754 754. Conditions apply.
This is LBC, live from Strasbourg, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Our Justice Secretary Liz Truss says it's a counsel of despair to say our prisons are too full, but they are. There are 85,000 people. It's grossly overcrowded. She says she won't let out any bad people, and somehow she'll reduce the numbers through reform. I don't think so. And I'm asking you, should we build more prisons? I'm also asking you, should we say to the 10,000 foreign prisoners, we're going to deport you back to your original country to at least buy ourselves some time? And to get involved in this, you can call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text me on 84850. You can tweet me on @LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC. And you can watch the show live from here in Strasbourg on LBC's Facebook page now. But before I get back to that, I want to recap. Last week, we talked about the Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, and I said to you that I thought that nobody in 700 years had breached the impartiality of the Speaker more than he'd done by basically calling the 45th President of the USA, Donald Trump, a racist and a sexist, and saying he wasn't welcome there. I thought he'd massively overstepped the mark and that he should go. And it was no surprise when we learnt on Saturday that addressing some students last week, the Speaker of the House of Commons said he'd voted Remain and told us why he'd voted Remain. If proof were needed that this man is incapable of being neutral, is not fit to be Speaker, then surely this was the final nail in his coffin. And it would appear, even though Parliament is in recess this week, they're all off for half term and not back till next Monday, but half the Cabinet now, when they're asked, do they think John Bercow should stay as Speaker, refuse to say they will, including Liz Truss, who I've been having a little bit of a go at this evening. So the question, should we build more prisons? Should we get rid of foreign prisoners to give ourselves some room? I'm going to ask Ralph in Canterbury what he makes of this.
Yeah, hi, Nigel.
Hello.
I wanted to make 2 points, really. 3 now, you brought another thing into the equation.
Right, go on quickly.
The first thing was, you said 45,000 people when we had 45 million people, and it's gone up pro rata. Well, I think 85,000 is probably a reflection on the 85 million people that are in this country. I think that's much closer to the number of people in this country than the government will let on to. I think there's significantly more than 70 million people in this country. So 85% probably represents the right equation as far as that goes. The second thing is you mentioned about the foreign prisoners, and I think that's an absolute no-brainer. That should be done almost overnight. We should send 10,000 people who shouldn't be here because they've got a criminal record in our country, but they don't necessarily hail from this aisle. They should definitely go. And the third thing was, I think that smaller misdemeanors or financial crime or people who are not a danger to society should be made to serve their sentence by helping the community in a different way, and to be paying whatever their penalties through financial penalties or helping the community, community service type stuff. If you're not a danger to society, then they don't necessarily need to go into prison.
Fair enough. Ralph, you've had a good crack, Ralph. You've put 3 points down there. Firstly, I'm sure you're right. I don't believe the population is 65 million at all. And in fact, we're just getting the figures out that in the pre-Brexit vote period, 200 illegal immigrants were being caught every single day. That's caught, let alone how many were actually getting through. The population, Ralph, is bigger than 65 million. I doubt it's 85 million, but it is bigger than 65 million. Yes, you agree with my point that if we did get rid of foreign criminals, then actually we'd have some room in our prisons. And thirdly, well, we already do have, don't we, a whole series of community service orders. These things do exist already within our system. I agree with previous callers who say there are some people, for example, those who haven't paid the BBC licence fee, who should not really be in prison. And I get that, and I've no doubt there is a case for reform. But, one of the big reasons why the prison population is up in the way that it is, and I would argue, despite Ralph's message on numbers, that since 1990, in fact, prison numbers have gone ahead of population for the first time since 1945, is, of course, there are more people being put in prison, especially for sexual crimes. And that is because we now prosecute these things more seriously in this country. Now, I would guess that if we had a phone in on that, the vast majority of you would say, blooming good thing too. But we can't have it both ways. And our Justice Secretary can't have it both ways. She can't argue that she won't let bad people out, but she doesn't need to build more prisons. She does need to build more prisons unless she gets rid of foreign prisoners. That's what I think. I wonder what Mimi in Chelsea thinks of that.
Hi, Nigel.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me on, even though I don't like you for the things that you say. But I feel very strongly about the prison population issues. Prisons are overcrowded because they don't reform. And instead of thinking about deporting foreign nationals in prisons, which only make up a minute percentage of the whole prison population, there should be more focus on rehabilitation, which there isn't. I am what you might consider as a foreign national, and I served a 4.5-year sentence. During that 4.5-year sentence, I mean, I'm legal in this country. I don't have any problems. I can stay in the country. But during the time that I was in prison, there was no reform. There was no rehabilitation. And people were coming in and out in the revolving door, British nationals, round the revolving door, because prison doesn't change the individual and it doesn't address the underlying issues that need to be addressed in order for them not to come back into prison. That's why there's prison overcrowding. Now, you were saying about how, people...
Well, Mimi, be fair, I have been arguing on this programme against people who've been saying prison should be really harsh and really tough, and I have been making the point since the top of the hour that actually, especially with first-time offenders, there is a very urgent need to try and educate and help people. And if we can reform especially first-time offenders, I'm completely with you on that. But Mimi, you also said that foreign nationals are an insignificant total compared with the prison population. They're not. They're 15%. It is a very real figure.
It's a minority. It's a serious minority. And most of those foreign nationals will be deported at the end of their sentence. They're not staying here. They'll be deported at the end of their sentence. So
no, but the problem, but Mimi, the problem is
because of foreign nationals. The overcrowding is because British people are committing petty crimes, and they're being put on the revolving door of crime and prison.
Well,
and that's
Mimi,
the reality of the issue.
I'm going to disagree, Mimi.
4.5 years on it. Well, you would.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree on the numbers.
I'm not surprised at that. I'm not surprised.
I'm going to disagree. Well, I'm going to disagree on the numbers because
you can't disagree on the fact that I was in prison for 4.5 years. During those 4.5 years, I saw the same faces coming in and out of prison. And it wasn't the foreign nationals.
Maybe
so
I'm not arguing with you. I'm not arguing with you that we should try to educate and reform. I get that. And I'm very much on the left wing of this conversation compared to most of the texts and tweets and calls we're getting here tonight. All right. But what I am saying is the percentage of foreign prisoners in British prisons is going up every year, not down every year. And we have a complete mismatch where for every 10 foreign prisoners in British prisons, there's only one British prisoner in the rest of the world. Maybe we would agree to disagree, but it is true. Listen, thank you for sharing your experience, and in your view, a lack of any attempt to rehabilitate first-time offenders, and I'm actually with you on that, even though you don't want me to be, but there we are. I can't please everybody. A quick last point on this from Scott in Roehampton. Scott, should we build more prisons?
How are you?
Good evening, I'm well.
Well, first of all, your last caller kind of got me thinking this whole reform thing. I'm an ex-criminal myself. I've been in and out of prison. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but reform and all these courses in prison, they don't work. They get the people out of the cell for the day. That's the only reason they do them. People sign up to religion inside so they can get out of their cell for the day. It's not because they want to do it. And again, I've got loads of friends in prison at the moment. I shouldn't be saying this, but in my eyes, you need to make prison a bit tougher.
Interesting. Very. How many times have you been in prison, Scott?
I've been in 4 times myself.
4 times, right?
Yeah.
And you think of it? If it was tougher, would you feel less like you want to go back there?
I feel like I'd want to go back. I'm not saying we should go back to the Borstal days, obviously, when it was tough prison, but I just think that it's for the youth of today, I've got a teenage son, and I wouldn't want him to go in there now. Because I'd feel that if he did, when he come out, he wouldn't feel like it's tough to go back there. I think the youth of today just think that they're going to see all their friends there. If my pal's in prison,
interesting.
If I go there,
Scott, I'm going to have to stop you, but you've made a really fascinating point. Right now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
UK employers say they're already struggling to fill vacancies as fewer EU nationals seek to work here. Will Brexit cause a major labour shortage?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Any expert will tell you wine cannot be tasted. It is experienced.
Put a cork in it. For wine without the faff, order at redorwhitetonight.com. Our experts make suggestions based on what you like. So the only choice you have to make is red or white tonight. Always drink responsibly.
You're the backbone of our business. Strong, reliable, plus you look great. And you're really well built.
Oh, cheers, Steve.
Not you, Terry.
The Renault Traffic with 4 years 0% APR, servicing, roadside assistance, up to 4 years warranty, and 3 What Van Awards. Make it part of your team. Visit a Renault Pro Plus specialist dealer to find out more. Business users and participating dealers only. Minimum deposit of 20%. Renault Finance hire purchase. Register by 31st of March. Subject to status. T's and C's apply. See renault.co.uk/offers.
I've broken down, Churchy. Cars like me belong in the fast lane, not the hard shoulder.
Oh, yes.
Oh, now I'm really going to blow a gasket.
No.
Don't end up stranded when you break down. Churchill offers new motor customers free breakdown cover.
Oh, Churchy, my knight in furry armour.
Oh.
Churchill, depend on the dog. First year free breakdown service provided by Green Flag, roadside only, new business policies only, excludes NI, underwritten by UK Insurance Limited, terms and conditions apply.
Divorce can be expensive. It affects your finances, assets, home, savings, pension, and most of all, your relationship with your children. It's probably one of the toughest times you'll ever go through. Cordell & Cordell understands these issues and helps men maximise their roles in their children's lives. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk. Office in central London. A partner men can count on.
I'm Tom. I'm in year 11. I was always getting told off for talking, so I thought about the debating team. Now I'm thinking about university.
I put the debating team flyer on his desk. Was sick of telling him to pipe down. I wanted to put his voice to better use. Now he's thinking about university. I teach year 11. I'm Mr. Corbett.
Apply now and you could get a £25,000 tax-free training bursary to teach subjects like maths and languages. Search Get Into Teaching. Subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
Let's not go home yet, Wilbur. There's a new film out with penguins in. Change of plans. You can control your heating from your phone wherever you are with Hive Active Heating. It's just £9 a month exclusive to British Gas customers, and you won't pay anything up front. You'll never need to heat an empty home or come back to a cold one again. Shh, Wilbur, the film's starting. Control your heating from your phone for just £9 a month. Search British Gas Hive. Conditions, exclusions and cancellation charges apply.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Strasbourg, only on LBC.
Our prisons are full to bursting and our Justice Secretary appears to have nothing to say. And I'm saying we've got to build more prisons. I'm saying we've got to get rid of foreign prisoners. And if we do that, we give ourselves a chance. And on Facebook, Alan Young says prisons are for punishment and should be used for that purpose. Anna Reesam says Burko needs to go. Well, I agree with that, Anna, you know that. Texan tweets, we need tough prison sentences for the first 2 years, run by the military, and then for those on longer sentences, reform them if you can. Nigel, firstly, ban parole, just time added on for poor behaviour. Split prisons into punishment and rehabilitation units with return to punishment units for poor behaviour and build more of them, says Steve. This problem will never go away until this wishy-washy liberal approach to everything in this country is abandoned for a more common-sense approach, says James. Well, it's interesting, James, isn't it, that we've had an ex-convict who's been in prison 4 times saying prisons, frankly, have gone too soft, and he feels if his youngster went into prison now, actually, it wouldn't be a proper punishment. We've had an ex-16-year prison officer on the phone telling us that discipline has broken down. Now, I'm still flying the flag, saying that I do think first-time offenders need to be given a chance, need to be educated. We must attempt to rehabilitate. My own feeling, I have to say, for persistent criminals is they're actually in prison to protect the rest of us, to get them out of our way. And I certainly would have no sympathy for a shortening of sentences just because the prisons are full. I wonder what John in Henley makes of this dilemma.
Hello, Nigel.
Hello.
With successive government policies constantly bringing in more prisoners, increasing the places, I think, is only part of the answer. I say people who break the law, who come from other countries, should be deported immediately. It would solve a great deal of the problem. Basically, I believe the government has no guts to deal with it.
Well, it doesn't, John. And as I say, we've got these problems with Hungary and Romania, who've got third world prisons, frankly.
Yeah.
But with the rest of the European Union, given that in theory there is an agreement in place, what are we hanging around for? What is wrong with our government? Who are they scared of?
I totally agree. The government should be doing much more about this. Much more about this. I mean, they're just mollycoddling the prisoners, and we get more and more and more, and they can't cope with the situation. They need a hard line.
What did you make, John, of Liz Truss's performance today as Justice Secretary?
Not very good. Rehabilitation is, quite honestly, outdated. I believe. I think we should go back maybe decades ago when prison meant prison.
John, you're a hardliner, but you're not on your own. That's how most people feel, and I thank you very much for your call. I wonder what Jacqueline in Brighton thinks of this. Jacqueline, good evening.
Okay, Nigel, thank you very much for speaking with me, and thank you for everything you have said. You're absolutely right. Deport people immediately. They commit a crime when they're from overseas. It's obvious. But let's just look at something here. Criminal Class is a book by Angela Delblin, given to the government in 1995, explained very clearly that 90% of people in prison had a learning difficulty. Now, the government decided to stop the re-education of prisoners. It is due primarily to a combination of mental illness and the lack of education and family breakdown, as well as a huge number of people in prison right now due to the confiscation laws, which are ridiculous. In 2014, the authorities spent 100 million administering confiscation orders, yet only confiscated a meagre 133 million. I mean, the economics do not add up. And Liz Truss should know this, because sums are her thing. I mean, that is it, though. But I mean, it doesn't cope with anything else, clearly. The place is in chaos, and I tell her directly, I've written to her, she doesn't have the decency to reply. You should get rid of everybody in prison is in there for fraud or anything to do with any financial thing, and get them to do Citizens Advice Bureau work, that kind of thing. No need for all this ridiculous confiscation order lunacy, which is lining the pockets of privatised courts. I mean, this is basically what it's about. Prisons are now about privatisation, and people are making money out of crime. I set up a programme for young people that were set up to go to secure units, and I worked out the maths that it would be easier and cheaper to educate them than to put them in secure units, which is between £3,000 and £5,000 per week per child. But oh no, the privatised system for that means that people are making money out of criminalising children. And this is what has got to stop, because they are the future major criminals that we're going to be facing.
There's a very similar point, Jacqueline. Very similar point was made earlier by the former prison officer saying that privatisation had devalued it. You make some very strong points, Jacqueline, and as you know, I've been shouting all evening saying that first-time offender who's come from a rotten background, has failed educationally, does deserve during that first prison sentence the opportunity to learn and do well, and you clearly have great experience, and I thank you. Here's one other radical idea. 15% of our prison population are foreign. I've made that point already. Another 15% of our prison population are in for drugs crimes or drug-related offences. Now, that is not, as a student George said earlier, people smoking a joint. You don't go to prison for that. You go to prison for dealing. But what if we were to decriminalise drugs completely in this country? You would then take nearly 15%, for a further 15% out of the prison population. I wonder what people think of that. I'm not giving a view, by the way. And I'm going to go to Niall in Oldham and ask, do we need to build prisons, Niall, or do we need to send foreign prisoners home? What's your solution?
Well, Nigel, my solution is simply to sort of find a good balance between rehabilitation and punishment, because at the end of the day, prison is where you go to be punished, essentially, for your crimes. But there needs to also be the focus on rehabilitation as well, so that they don't offend again. So you sort of keep them out of prison, in play, functioning normally, paying taxes as you do. But like you said, if some really bad criminals, like murderers, rapists and such, do need to be locked away for a long time, their focus should be on punishment. And if they're punished for what they've done. But smaller crimes, like stealing and stuff like that, focus more on the rehabilitation side for them. Try and... Yeah,
Niall, I wouldn't disagree. I wouldn't disagree with any of that, Niall. I wouldn't disagree with it at all. And that is the balance, I guess, we're always trying to strike. What I'm sort of hit by this evening from people ringing in is an idea that discipline has broken down within our prisons. And actually, in many ways, they have got a bit too soft. And actually, there's no contradiction here, is there? Because you can educate people and give them a chance to get on and learn, whilst at the same time having a discipline regime. Something clearly is going fundamentally badly wrong, Niall, with our prisons, and I thank you. Text and tweets: first-time offenders rarely go to prison. They go through the list of alternative sentences before they get banged up, and that's from Al in Kent. Well, yeah, I mean, that is true. But what I'm arguing is that when somebody is locked up for the first time, we should try and do better with them. Nigel, do you think the prisons in Saudi Arabia are worried about rehabilitation? I think the core purpose here should be to punish so that offenders learn not to go back, as conditions are so bad inside, says Lewis from Kingston. Well, my final thought on this is I want us to have a just and fair judicial system. You know, I want people to have their rights of innocence before guilt, habeas corpus, trial by jury, and all the rest of it. And I want first-time offenders. I want us to do our very, very best, because probably a lot of them actually can't read and write properly, and we should recognise that. But when it is long-term, persistent, serious people who pose a threat to our society, I have absolutely no compunction in thinking that they should be kept in prison, not to be rehabilitated, not just for punishment, but to protect the rest of us. And unless this government has the courage to deport foreign criminals, we are going to have to build a lot more prisons. We could, of course, save ourselves a fortune, couldn't we? I'm here in Strasbourg, and tomorrow there's a big debate, tomorrow morning, in the European Parliament about the future of the European Union. And do you know what? I'm going to tell them their fortune. They won't like it. They're going to boo. They're going to hiss.